we ready to start?
I believe so. Nick, good evening.
Okay. I know you guys, some of you have been here for prior meetings, so
yeah,
probably ready to wrap up.
mm-hmm.
Why don't we call this meeting to order then? Is that good with everyone?
Yes.
Okay, this is the Building Level Advisory Committee for the Longfellow Building Committee. I'm Nick Mavadonis, one of the chairs of the committee. Yes, I don't know if we have anybody watching. So have you guys been doing introductions at the other two meetings out here? No.
We haven't,
Okay.
and there is nobody. There's nobody. It's on Facebook, so there could theoretically be people watching on Facebook, but there are no attendees.
Understood. So people can see who's here. Welcome everyone. We have approval of the meeting minutes as our first order of business. I can't remember what a quorum is. I've forgotten. Have we been voting on these?
We have, and we have a quorum as well.
We have a quorum. Okay, great. So is there a motion to approve the prior meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Who was that?
Joe Carter. Joe Carter.
Oh, hey, Joe, thanks. Is there a second? Emily is putting her hand up. Emily Surway is seconding. Is there any discussion by any of the members on the minutes?
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anyone. And I think, if I remember correctly, you guys haven't been doing roll calls at these meetings.
No.
So could everybody who is in favor of the approval of the minutes just put your hand up to signify so we can see it on the screen? And that, well, if some of you may not have your screen on yet, but I'm going to.
People that aren't on. Oh no, there's some that are coming in now that are members.
Yep. So I don't see any objection from anyone. So I think we have a unanimous vote. So with that done, who is handling the permitting timeline?
So Lysa and Mark are going to walk us through that. That's the big agenda item, is talking through where we are with permitting and the impact of the permitting delays on the projects as they currently stand. So Mark or
Lysa?
Yeah.
Yep, I think Lysa is bringing it up now. We'll make mention again that fairly dense slides in terms of not a lot of graphics, a lot of just detail. We'll try to talk through that. We'll pause to answer questions. Please feel free to ask any questions on that material, and we'll do the best we can to explain it. Lisa's microphone has been a little spotty tonight, so we'll do the best we can to get through that. And with that, Lysa, you ready to go?
I'm ready. Good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. If my microphone does cut out, Mark will jump in. All right, so we've done our welcomes, we've approved the meeting minutes, we'll jump right into the permitting timeline. Just to kind of frame the conversation, tonight's timeline is taking us through, we're going to walk through Lysa first, so you can see the timeline that was experienced on Lysa and what was used as the framework to set up the timetable for permitting on all of these projects. And then we'll walk you through the process for the two permits that we applied for on Longfellow, and go through that process and talk about the one permit we do have and the one permit that is still in pursuit. So Lysa permitting timeline, again, for reference, this permit was applied for in June 23, 2019, and the comments were received on July 15th. We responded to those on the 18th, and we received a permit on the 23rd. While we were waiting for that permit, it was about 4 weeks to get that permit. While we were waiting for that, we wanted to be able to get the contractor going immediately. So we applied for a demo permit, and we saw, so they could get some of the interior demo work started. That was applied for on June 26th and received on June 28th. And there was not a portable permit required for relocating the portables on the site. So that was about a 4-week timeline for those permits. The Longfellow permitting timeline for the portables. So we applied for the Longfellow portable permit on June 4th. We had several meetings with the city. Some of them are very standard permitting meetings to kick off the process. And others had to walk through some of the comments that were received. And other meetings were to essentially walk the site, make sure we're all on the same page as what was going to be done and completed prior to kids coming back to school at the end of August. So that's that first row there on the meetings. We received comments for the portable application on July 7th and requesting some additional information and a document pretty much showing the distance to the restrooms inside. We responded on July 11th and we received that permit on July 20th. Any questions on the portable permit application or timeline? Okay. Moving on to the Longfellow building permit. We applied for this permit on May 24th, 2021. June 17th is when we had a pre-construction meeting. And then we had another meeting on the 21st to kind of discuss the work that was going to occur during this summer, the abatement that was happening and the portables, so some pre-permit work. And then we had the formal permit management meeting on July 7th. And on July 8th, we met with the fire department to review the phasing plans on site. Pause there for a minute and explain what the phasing plans are. These are occupied phased renovations. And so the city requires drawings to understand how the construction will be separated from the occupants of the building during construction. So we walked through what those were on site. There were some questions raised about those, as well as a question raised about the egress from the second floor, and ultimately not approving our approach or request for grandfathering an existing condition. And we arrived at a solution to where we provided a fire separated corridor from one of the stairs to the outside. We uploaded drawings on the 5th reflecting a corridor, and this is a different corridor. I'm sorry, that is that corridor, I apologize, for them to review. And then we had a site walk on the 10th with the city to look at the work inside the building and the portables. The week of August 23rd was a very busy week, just making sure that all work that had been started was to a point to where the building could be reoccupied by students, and the portables were ready for occupancy. As part of the phasing questions that came up, we were required by the city to put in a fire-rated ceiling on the first floor as part of that construction. We then had a meeting on September 30th to go over some of the responses that came in on September 28th. A review of the different meetings that have occurred in this time period. Then we'll get into sort of the process of receiving comments, replying to comments, and ultimately where we're at. We received official comments on July 7th and requesting various things, making sure that the drawings were labeled for construction. Ultimately, we arrived at being able to call it a conformance set, which is an industry standard, providing total occupant loads per floor, asking us to remove the phasing drawings that we had as part of the construction set because they wanted them separate per phase. and just addressing some questions on the drawings for the proposed wall construction in a couple areas, and providing a separate statement of special inspections. We issued a change directive, the construction change directive sent to the city and contractor to add that exit corridor that we had talked about. That was sent to everyone on August 3rd. The cut sheets for construction addressing any of the rated assemblies for the work going on inside the building were sent on August 10th. And a response submitted. We submitted a memo on the 3rd following the drawings on the 11th, addressing the questions that they had raised on the set. We had a city pre-inspection walk through August 18th. So this was related to getting the building back online before school. We received responses to the comments on the revised drawings on September 10th. And the question about fixture counts was asked, as well as a couple other questions on our drawings. And this is where there is a difference of interpretation on the fixture counts, where Harriman had a past experience and understanding with the state plumbing inspector as to how we could document and calculate fixture counts based on school occupancy and not the egress count that you do on a building, and it's more based on the use. So we've gone back and forth with the city on that several times back and forth. You can see the revision to comments and responses, and ultimately submitted a draft response to them on the 30th, and it was on a Zoom call. And it was at that time that we requested that we reach out to the state plumbing inspector to get an interpretation. And if essentially that was put into motion, and we submitted information to them. There was some meetings that occurred between several folks, between the plumbing and state plumbing inspector and the state fire marshal. And right now we're at the point where we are waiting for the state plumbing inspector and the state fire marshal to connect early next week to make a written determination as to how we calculate those fixture counts. So that is the open piece right now on the permit, and that permit has not been received to date. So that is the timeline. I'll pause there. It looks like there might be a question. Bill?
Yeah, thank you for that detail. That's pretty interesting. I just want to understand, are we to see the Lysa building permit appears to have been a very short process, but maybe you omitted some detail on that Lysa slide? Because it looks like, compared to Lysa, that I'm taking that Longfellow had a lot of notes and a lot of changes also.
Yeah, the process was pretty straightforward on Lysa. We received a handful of comments. They were addressed and the permit was approved.
You all set, Bill?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm just, it begs the next question is, why was Longfellow, why were there all this scrutiny on occupancy and fixtures and egress, Bill,
I can't speak because I'm not a staff member or the consultant, but I can say that I know there are a number of issues on the other two schools, and I've been involved in at least one lengthy meeting on trying to, early in the process, with some of the folks who were on the screen, trying to make sure everything is being done in a timely fashion. But I know from reviewing a lot of emails over the course of the project that there have been a number of issues. I wasn't involved in the Lysa, but I know in Longfellow there have been a number of code issues that the city has had concern about, as they would with any other project, whether it's a private developer or the city itself or the school department. But Javier or Mark or Lisa can certainly weigh in on that. I just know I've been party to a lot of communication on this issue for several months now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure there are always, every project has a lot of, the further it goes and the more scrutiny it picks up along the way, and everybody should weigh in if it's their job to do so. So I get it. I was just concerned that maybe there was more to the story that I didn't understand. So thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'll just say that, as Councilor Mevedon has pointed out, that we have no permits for the other two buildings either. So this is not unique to Longfellow. I think what's more, what's unique to Longfellow is Longfellow was the first permit that was submitted, and we still don't have it. We still don't have a final permit on it. And I think, from my perspective, it has been, it's been just a constant, and I think you see that in these slides, a constant, sort of communication spiral where, something is submitted, there's a problem with it, something is resubmitted, then there's a different problem, then something else is submitted and there's a different problem. So I think that that's how we find ourselves where we are right now. And really the purpose of this was to illustrate, the length and the significant amount of back and forth that has gone into it. And then the next phase of today's meeting is really to talk about sort of the impact of that.
Anybody else have any questions? I don't see any hands, but thank you for that thorough chronology. Certainly, based on a lot of the emails I've seen, I guess seeing it all in one place puts it in perspective. But thank you for the thorough chronology of all of that.
Absolutely. If there aren't any more questions, I'm going to pass it over to Mark, who's going to go into the impacts. Oops, I apologize. There's more. I forgot about the permitting, the construction phasing. So these are those phase drawings we talked about and back and forth that occurred on the phase 1 and phase 2 drawing. With that, we'll go into the impact of the project.
Very good. Yes. Thank you, Lisa, for that. So in addition to just the understanding that it's taken a while to get the permit, we've got a contractor that's on board. And anytime you have a contractor on board and they're not allowed to progress at the schedule that they anticipated, there are going to be impacts to the project. And in addition to just the construction impact, the construction contract impact, they're brought about by the schedule. There's also cost impacts to some of the requested changes and interpretations by the code enforcement office at the City of Portland. And so the ones that have had a cost impact are a temporary ceiling that we have installed in the lower, or the first, call it the first level, or second level, first floor, sometimes referred to. And that's to create a 1 hour barrier between the construction work on one side of the corridor wall and the corridor itself. And so that's a lay-in ceiling, a acoustic tile ceiling that has a rating to it. And then the corridors themselves, we've increased the rating of a portion, as we talked about, the egress from the second story on one stair, the stair closest to Deering, that we've added a rating which required replacing doors with rated doors and hardware in a portion of the school permanently. So those two items are cost increases because the scope of the work increased. The other impact that we, and we'll go into a little more detail in a slide or two here, is the cost impact to the delay in the contractor. And right now, we don't know what that is, and we won't know until we have the permit and the contractor can then develop their construction schedule and understand where they originally were and where they are now and what the impact has been from a cost perspective. In addition to those two items, there's also an impact to the operations of the school with a longer duration construction. And right now, again, we don't know what the total length of construction schedule will be, but there's a possibility that we'll need the portable classrooms longer than originally anticipated. That also has a cost impact too. We're leasing those portables, and so in addition, and we have to heat them, and so that all has a cost impact too. And I'll move to the two slides. I think we'll kind of skip there. There we go. From a cost perspective on the contractor, what they will likely ask for are costs for general conditions, which the contractor has mobilized. They have brought equipment to the site. They have set up their operations. They also have staff that is assigned to the project. And when right now they're not able to assign them to a different job, and they will need them longer. And so there's going to be costs for those, for the what we call general conditions, part of the contract that the general contractor pays for. Then there are the subcontractors, and they may have costs as well, and due to the delay. There may be acceleration costs but that the contractor will use to try to get back on schedule. If the contractor has workforces that will have to work an additional shift or on weekends, there are premium costs associated for that. There are possible winter conditions. So building systems, some building systems need a certain temperature range to be installed. And if we get into the colder months, we'll have to provide a way to temper the environment around the installation of those systems. And so an example would be concrete, for instance, that we'd either add mixtures or add warming blankets during the curing process, or both. And so those cost more money. The other aspect that we talked about was the extended rental of the modulars. And as noted, we simply don't know what the full impact of these costs is until we receive the schedule, the permits, and then can develop the schedule. Our owner's project manager, CHA, has been working to try to get a sense of what the order of magnitude of what these costs, both for the added scope and for the delays in schedule, are looking like. And Laura, I think I see that you're available now, maybe to help with some of those figures.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So we have, as Mark indicated, there's a lot of variables that contribute to the overall cost, and it will be solidified after we finally have the permit and the contractor is able to assess what their subs, what the final impact is. We have made some assumptions on the receiving the permit and that time frame, and then what the contractor's impact would be. And we also know some of the hard costs on the implications from the requirements by the city for the fire-rated corridor and the entrance vestibule off the Deering side of the building. So overall, approximately what we're looking at right now is $640,000. 150 of that accounts for what we know for sure to date, based on the rated corridor and the vestibule. And then the balance is, what we're thinking of for the general conditions and sub-costs and winter conditions.
Thank you, Laura. I will pause before we go to sort of the next aspect of of this if there are questions.
I'm not,
Well,
not seeing any hands. Anybody got their hand up?
Well, sorry, I have to ask a question on that. I mean, if we're going to have additional costs, and I don't think those were budgeted for, right?
Correct.
So something has to probably be taken out of the plan, right?
Right now, what we're doing is evaluating the degree to which the contingency we have will cover some of these costs. Mm-hmm. If we expend the full contingency, then we will look at other line items in the budget and determine what can shift to cover the construction costs.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anyone else have questions? See anyone?
Okay, I'll move to the final topic in this aspect of the presentation tonight, and that is what could have been done differently. And the first item is that we would have pushed out the start of construction on all of these, and that this is sort of hand in hand with the second bullet point, which it says that had we anticipated a 4-month permit process, we would have delayed the award for the contractor or the notice to proceed for 4 months. And so they would have started later. We would have determined the whole project to have started later, and the whole course of the occupancy shifts in the building would have just been done differently. So that's the first thing we would have done. We could not have applied for the permits sooner because it's required that you actually have the documents completed before you apply for the permits. And so it's a matter of sort of that sequence of timing and events. One thing that we used to, as a practice, do, and we did with Lysa, and then the only, again, this is one consideration only. Don't know that this would have had a significant impact, but one thing we could have done is done a virtual meeting with the code enforcement office prior to applying for the permits. And I started with prior to COVID, the planning department used to organize a meeting with several departments at City Hall where we would go through the scope of the projects and have an opportunity to inform and answer questions from these departments, including code enforcement and the fire department, prior to submitting the permit application. Those stopped with COVID. And so one change thinking going forward is that we could request a virtual meeting to go through the scope of the work. So the last point is simply that right now, where we are with this, we have been able to process submittals prior in advance of the work happening, so that when the contractor gets that portion of the work for materials or equipment, we've already reviewed it and the materials have been procured and they're ready to go. So there may be some efficiencies in that process of reviewing submittals of materials and equipment and the contractor's procurement of that, so that will flow efficiently and smooth when they get to that. So they're trying to take advantage of this time the best we can, but that won't have an impact in pricing. With that, again, I'll see if there's any questions.
I'm not seeing any hand. Anyone got something? I don't see anybody, Mark. Do you?
Yep, no, I don't. Very good. So just with next meetings, we have a DABC meeting. So the District Advisory Building Committee meeting is the third Thursday in November. The fourth Thursday, we don't anticipate we're going to be with all of you. Hopefully you're enjoying a day for Thanksgiving. And so we we'll look to see how we can continue to inform everyone. We hope certainly by then we'll have very positive news about the permit and the construction really ramping up. So that's the month of November. We have been very busy with a series of celebratory points in the process, and then the Reiki and Presumpscot schools have both had groundbreakings, and we understand that there's a series of jokes that are delivered, and I have yet to hear the jokes. I'm anxious to know what those are, Superintendent Botana. But and then there was a ribbon cutting, kind of bookending the construction process at Lysa and celebrating the completion of the construction there. So that occurred today. Tomorrow, excitedly, is the Longfellow groundbreaking at 1 o'clock. And so that's really, really, again, a great moment to celebrate getting to this point. So amidst all of the challenges of getting the permit, we do know that we are underway, and that part is worth celebrating, and we're excited to do that. So I will pause it at this point in time and turn it back over to Chair Mavrodanis.
Thanks, Mark. And Lisa, thanks for the presentation. Does anybody have any lingering questions that they didn't get a chance to ask? If not, I think we're ready to wrap up. I'm not seeing anyone. So I think we're ready to adjourn. Thank you all for being here tonight.